Whilst the bombs might not be going off anymore, rest assured the gangs still operate, and their grip on the criminality is an iron one, a vice-like grip, and they're not about to loosen it anytime soon. My name is Peter Bleksley. I'm a former Scotland Yard detective. The majority of my career was dedicated to tackling serious and organised crime. From London to Lancashire and from Devon to Dundee, there are gangs operating in the UK. And quite simply, they are a danger to us all. The makeup of gangs in London has changed dramatically in the last few decades. Now, Albanian gangs are prevalent. One of them calls themselves Helbanians. And they've got a firm grip on the cocaine trade in London, which is estimated to be as much as £5 billion. Violence, torture, murder, the tools of their trade, and they have a vice-like grip on some of the nighttime economy. They are very much a new and present threat. Back in the 80s and the 90s, the Adams family were very prominent in organised crime, and basically they ruled the roost. In the end, their downfall was brought about by the security services. And it had to be them because the Adams family had corrupted so many police officers. Whilst their influence may have diminished, they still remain a concern. 6'5" David Hunt will tell you that he's a legitimate businessman. However, courageous journalists took a case against David Hunt all the way to the High Court, where it was eventually ruled by a senior judge that Hunt is very much a gangster and very much embroiled in serious and organised crime. He lives in a huge property and enjoys the lifestyle that many of us could only dream of. But rest assured, he's a crook and he's got a lot of fingers in a lot of pies. Youth violence and youth gangs is a tremendous problem, and there has been an unacceptable tide of teenage bloodshed flowing through the streets of our great capital city. The commodity that they're most interested in is, of course, drugs. It's complex, it's dangerous, and it's a huge issue for law enforcement. Gangs are such a problem in the nation's second city that the Serious Crime Squad has doubled in size recently. There are about 40 gangs, apparently, operating in that city with a pretty tight grip on a lot of the criminality. Gangs in Birmingham kind of came to notoriety through the Peaky Blinders television show. Gangs like the 247-365 and the Burger Boys are very well known. In fact, their tag, their graffiti tag, can still be seen quite prominently around the Midlands. Some of these gangs have links to the Kinahan family, who originate from Ireland. The Birmingham Gangs, like so many of the others throughout the country, predominantly operate in drugs. But there's a lot of other criminality that they get involved in. People trafficking, the sex industry, fraud, stealing of high-value motor vehicles. They are a considerable threat. Liverpool is now renowned as a significant city in which gangs operate, and through which much of the drugs industry of the UK is linked. At the lower level, street level, there are gangs like the Crocker Crew, they're out of Croxteth, and the boys from Norris Green, which is known locally as the Nogger, and many others, Stockbridge Village, and I could go on. They are responsible for a lot of bloodshed, tit-for-tat killings, where people have fought over territory. Innocent people get caught up in the gunfire, in the turf battles, and so often, entirely innocent people lose their lives. The most tragic example of gangs activity landing on the streets of Liverpool was the tragic murder last year of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel. Her death was a direct result of criminal gangs having a fallout and carrying out their retribution on the streets of that great city. A purely innocent 9-year-old girl got caught in the crossfire and tragically lost her life. The word on the street that reaches me is that the Manchester gangs are the most feared of all. There was, of course, in recent times, the A-Team, led by Paul Massey. He lost his life. There was, of course, the anti-A-Team, which sprung up from a dispute among A-Team members. Their falling out led to bloodshed and loss of life. I operated undercover against a gang in Manchester, and I have to say they were the most fearsome that I came across. When I went for a meeting, there was always a 9mm pistol on the table, pointing at me, just in case I should get ideas above my station, I would imagine. There's other notorious gangs, the Cheetham Hill Gang, the Gooch Gang, and the Pepper Hill Mob, all of them scrapping over territory, protecting their interests, and swift to use violence if the need arises. Northern Ireland is almost unique in the UK. Most of its criminality has been driven by sectarian disputes over the years, Catholics versus Protestants, although it is, of course, 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement was signed, and a lot of the terrorism activity has faded away. And whilst thankfully the bombs and the bullets are largely a thing of the past, the drug dealing continues. The Kinahan family, or the Kinahan clan as many call them, have earned their reputation over the years, and it is undeniable that their tentacles of criminality stretch far and wide through to Spain, other parts of Europe, across the Atlantic and beyond. That is why the US authorities have put such huge rewards up for the capture of a number of them. $5 million for each of them. I would suggest, if you do know where one of the Kinahans is that is wanted, I'd take the money if I were you. Not so many years ago, Glasgow had a dreadful reputation as being an extremely violent city. A lot of people have done a lot of work to reduce the violence, but gangs, of course, do still operate. There's the Lyons and the Daniels families, two gangs that have had disputes stretching back over many years. And this is what happens within gangs. They cannot take their disputes to the court. They can't get a solicitor to write a letter. They have to resort to violence. It's their currency, no matter where these gangs may operate. And that, my dear friends, is why gang membership should be swerved at all costs. For the past 50 years, in terms of tackling criminal gangs, we've done exactly the same thing again and again and again, and achieved very little indeed. Unfortunately, the police gave up patrolling the streets a long time ago because they're too busy going from one 999 call to the next 999 call with the blue lights flashing and the sirens wailing. Those streets have been taken over in many, many places in the UK by gangs. It's their territory. They rule the roost. Consequently, there is an obligation upon us all to keep ourselves safe and sound.